Hi everyone, John Spagnoli of the Shadowed Soul podcast joins us today to talk about his journey with bipolar disorder type 1 and also his new podcast on the network, The Shadowed Soul. I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all we promised we'd be cordial. John Spagnoli, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And coming on our network. You've got a show, the Shadowed Soul podcast, and I love that. Tell my listeners and your listeners what your show is going to be about and why you wanted to, be a part of a mental health network.
Well, I think I wanted the show basically to to find out how people are feeling about mental illness. And I think mental illness, mental health care, mental illness is something people don't really talk about. And I think it's very important for people to acknowledge it, because 1 in 4 people are depressed, and it's very prevalent in society. So it's something that has to be talked about and basically talk about more and understand what's going on, and not have a stereotype that is about you're mentally ill, mental illness, and you're basically different. It's just mental illness is something that happens. With proper medication, people do get better and feel better about themselves. Like I said, there's a stereotype: you're mentally ill, you're going to do something strange, and that's not really the case. With proper medication, you're back to normal, you feel fine, and everything's okay.
What do you say about people that, because, I've heard it all at this point. There are people that just tell you, if you take vitamins and you exercise, then you wouldn't have any of these issues, and all pharmaceuticals are bad. What do you say about that?
Well, I mean, they say about exercise, if you're depressed, even have other underlying mental conditions, exercise is a great way to make yourself more healthy. It does alleviate depression. By exercising, you get your body in sync, and basically, by exercising, it does improve your mood. You feel better about yourself, which in turn helps you with depression. Now, and other symptoms. Basically, over-the-counter vitamins, things like that, I've never been a big advocate of that. Because a lot of these different vitamin D, different medication, different medicines you take, vitamin D, vitamin E, they help your body, but they don't cure your illness or your mental health. They just maybe make you feel a little better about it. But you really need to see someone that's a professional about it, like a psychiatrist, or even see a social worker to talk through your problems. That's the way you get better. You're not going to get better by taking some pills at a store. You can try that, but I highly doubt that's going to really help you. So like I said, exercise, talking to a professional, and I'm certainly not professional, but I've lived through these problems and things like that, being a bipolar man. And basically the medication is what works. And having talk therapy also helps you stay stable, and you don't get into a phase of being manic and things like that where you're depressed. So social worker or psychologist can help walk you through different problems you have and make you feel a little better. And also the medication regimen is something that does help you a lot.
Talk to me about your journey with creating the movie that you're working on, and all the things that you're doing in terms of advocacy.
Well, basically what I'm doing is I did write a book, Shadowed Soul, from 2013. I'm working on a movie, and what I decided to do was I had it it's not a good time to do a movie just because there's so much happening in the world about the COVID-19. It's not something I want to really do right now, I've decided. And I had to link up for about a month. Anything really didn't happen with Shadow Soul, the movie. So I just closed the account on GoFundMe to redo it and find a little more, redo it later in the, a few months from now. I did get feedback about it. I was told that the little trailer that I had looked a little violent and was very dark. That was just someone who had made a comment to me. And I thought about it. It makes sense because if you're going through a depression or some kind of mental health condition, you really don't need to see a video that looks depressing and comments that are inappropriate. So basically what I did is I'm going to go back, refurb the script. It's a 30-minute movie, make it a little bit more upbeat so people that are not feeling well can get an upbeat feeling from it and really feel positive about themselves. So I'm going to redo that, write the screen. As a screenwriter, I'm going to write it over again, look it over, and then in a few months propose it to a few people I know and go from there. And like I said, a lot of people about COVID-19 are donating, rightfully so, to food for people, helping people, and not really looking at things like a movie because that's like secondary. And I do understand that. So I'm going to do that maybe 4 or 5 months, put it out there again, and I'll talk about more on my podcast, things like that. But basically, I'm going to wait on that. But it's going to be an interesting movie talking about depression and being manic and things like that, like my book, Shadowed Soul. So that's where I'm going right now.
Well, what's your journey been with depression? Like, how old were you when you were first diagnosed or knew that there was a problem?
With depression, I mean, I'm bipolar, so it's depression, mania, and also mixed emotions, which I could discuss time-wise. Depression. I was actually depressed in 11th grade. Now, a few years earlier, I was a little manic, things like that. And I was depressed in 11th grade, and I missed half of school. I had to do homeschooling. Also, I had very difficulty sleeping at night, and I was very upbeat, not upbeat, but very imagining things and basically saying I could be a manager of the Yankees and things like that. I was manic at the time. And other times I was depressed. And with bipolar, is you get manic about something, you think you'd be a president of the United States and this and that. Things are not realistic, but in your mind you believe I could definitely do that. And there's a fine line between saying that and actually accomplishing something and knowing if you're manic or not. Now, after mania, unfortunately, the side effect is if it's really manic, you go into a depression. And that's something that can last a while unless you talk to a social worker or psychologist and get out of depression. And that's where you get exercise, get sunlight, things like that so you're not depressed and just work your way through it.
Okay, so in terms of, what you're going to do with your podcast, what are you wanting to do with it?
Basically, what I want to do with the podcast, I want to talk to different people, do interviews with people that write books, interviews people that have depression and are manic at certain times, just to get a feeling how other people are feeling about it and talk about more what they went through and how they can, talk with me and help maybe answer a few questions or get people to feel, okay, different people have this issue. Maybe I can help with it also. Maybe I should get treatment. And I think interviewing different people is interesting perspective, what they're going through, and different people going through these different stages with mental health issues or even other things, depression. You get a feel for that. I'm not the only one that has it. Now, I've gone through it, but do other people have it? That's other people do have it. And often when you're depressed, you kind of isolate yourself and people think you're antisocial, things like that. Well, it's not necessarily true. You're just very depressed and very manic. And I think with the podcast, I just want to bring that out. And also I'm going to interview different authors that bring out their own books out about depression and get a different viewpoint from them and what they have done to live a more healthy life.
Right. Gotcha. So what do you do in terms of, your work life and how has bipolar disorder kind of affected that for you?
Well, my work life is actually very good. I mean, I go through depression sometimes, also manic, and I work at a county job, Nassau County job, and they're very understanding. It's a government job, and when I need to take some time off, they're like, "Oh, sure, take some time off." I mean, there's work to be done at the job, but they're very understanding of my situation. They know I'm bipolar, so they know if I get depressed, I can take a few days off, or if I'm manic, take a few days off, or if I have to be hospitalized, they're like, okay, fine, just a week or two. I bring in a note from the doctor to put in my file, which they don't even look at it. Just put it in my file, and I go from there. But it certainly can affect the way you work if you're depressed or manic. So you have to understand that if you find yourself getting distracted, if you find yourself basically feeling depressed, hard to do work, that's the indication. I've talked more to my psychologist or therapist, how I can get through it without basically affecting my work. And that, unfortunately, it does affect work sometimes, but that's when I have to regroup and understand that this is what I'm going through. How can I, maybe someone else in my office can pick up the slack a little bit until I'm feeling better about myself.
Have you ever had any kind of bullying or, people misunderstanding or not believing you about this? Have you had any kind of negative thing at a job around your bipolar disorder?
Not really, no. I mean, I live in a great workplace. They all understand my situation. When I
Good.
wrote Shadowed Soul in 2013, different people were like, oh, I didn't realize you were bipolar. I had different discussions with people at work. They're very understanding. I had someone at work I'm friends with, I could say her name, friends with, her mother was bipolar and was in the hospital when she was little for months at a time. So it brought out different people knowing bipolar. Now, I have a very good friend in the office. I won't say his name. I told him I'm bipolar, and he said to me, it was interesting, he said, oh, you're so normal. I'm like, okay. Yeah, with medication, you are normal. Not that your mental health issues, you're not normal. But I thought that's kind of interesting. He said, oh, I didn't know you're bipolar. You're so normal. So just kind of the underlying thing people think about with
Right.
mental health illness. They think that, but.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's changed a lot, though, don't you think? I mean, it used to be, I don't know what your age range is, and you don't have to say, but I'm 50. And for me, you didn't talk about, there was not a lot of mental health information. You didn't really talk about those things when I was in my 20s and 30s. And it didn't really start changing until I was in my mid 40s that I started seeing society be, less fearful about talking about mental health.
Well, actually, you're right about that. I'm 49. I'm not afraid to say my age, so we're basically the same age range. Yep. Yeah, there's very little, there was very little on it. There was stuff on it, but it was something where I know my psychiatrist once said, oh, don't tell people you have this underlying condition. When I was getting to certain jobs, things like that. I'm like, what's the big deal? So when I wrote the book, one of the ladies at the job gave me a hug and said, oh, you're so brave. I'm like, about what? And to me, it's just no big deal. And I don't personally care if someone doesn't like me. I mean, doesn't like me because I'm bipolar. To me, it makes no sense. If they can't understand what I'm going through, I really don't need to be friends with them. But like I said, at work, I've had no issues with that. I think the issues come to the media, things like that. Part of the problem is the way they portray people. They portray people like with mental illness. Well, he did some horrible thing, or he did a crime. Right. You find out in the newspaper, and oh yeah, bipolar, and they just make a bad name for people with mental health issues.
Right, exactly, and it's completely unfair. So I get it. You want to help be part of the, someone that's going to go out and take away even more of the stigma around this, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's true.
So tell us about your book.
Okay, my book. It's based in the the present time, and one of the characters, Thomas, he's bipolar, and what happens is he has a problem where he's depressed, he has different issues, and what problems he has is his internal thoughts is with his character Shadowed Soul. Now, Shadowed Soul is basically this little character that kind of hangs around Thomas. Is imaginary, though in the movie you'll see the presence of him or him. And what he does is he's always telling Thomas the wrong thing to do. Oh, we should do this. She's acting this way. Why are you doing this? So his internal thoughts, which comes with Shadowed Soul, are always bad thoughts he has. Now, he has a happy life with his wife, Beth. But as time goes on, he has different problems. He loses his job. He's seeing a therapist and trying to get Shadowed Soul out of the way and not bothering him. So it's kind of like a book that's understanding of someone's mental illness, and it explains people have problems with mental illness, mental health issues, and over time it might be a worse condition, but there's never no hope, basically. So basically he's really low down, doesn't have a job, and different problems he has, and he comes out of it, and at the end of the book he's a lot better, put it that way.
Okay. Did you ever think that you would become an author?
No, I never thought I'd become an author. That was something I'd wanted to do the different times I was in the hospital, which has been many times, unfortunately. And I've always wanted to write a book, write something that would talk more about mental illness. And every time I was in the hospital, I wanted to write something, what different people are going through,
Right.
and that we're basically not, quote, abnormal. We are just someone that needs some medication mix or something like that. It's nothing we've done wrong. I mean, it's just our mental composition or whatever, our brain a certain way, it charges, a different way. So it's just a type of medication. Now, certain like schizophrenia, things like that, they have medication, but some of these things, mental health issues, have less medication than bipolar. So it's always a struggle for them. So I've always wanted to write a book to help people get through their condition, understand a little more about it.
Fantastic. I love that you did that, and I love that you are so open about talking about being hospitalized, because the way that you are about it is so just beguiling. It's endearing to hear you just be like, well, this is how it is. And there isn't any, I don't sense any kind of anger or bitterness or resentment coming from you around having a diagnosis like this. And I say that coming from me, I have my own diagnoses, but a lot of people that I talk to that are advocates out there, not a lot, but a few of them really have some unresolved anger about having to deal with depression.
Yeah, actually, that's true. I mean, with being bipolar or manic depressive or now bipolar, it's something that I was very, the younger years, I was angry. I was pissed off. Why me? Like 2%, 3% of the population has bipolar. Like, why me? Why was I chosen, so to speak, to have this problem? Like, even in college, I went to SUNY New Paltz. In college, I had to leave college like 2 or 3 times. The conditions I had. My psychiatrist was very proud of me because I graduated college with different issues I had. Every 2 or 3 weeks, I had to go down from New Paltz to Long Island, talk to my psychiatrist, and then go back again to school, which was very disruptive because my friends were up there. I wanted to do something on the weekend. But basically, like I said, I just kept pushing forward with it. Now, different people can use it as a crutch, well, it can't work, or different problems are going on. I was never in that case. I always wanted to work. I didn't want to get payments from the government, something like that. I've been told I have severe bipolar. So many times I've been hospitalized. So if I miss medication for a couple of days, I get manic very quickly.
Mm.
So unfortunately, that's what I have. But I've come to realize that's just something I have.
And it's been a journey to get there, is what you're saying.
Absolutely a
too.
journey.
To
Yeah, I've been
have
through a lot of hoops.
to have this much peace about it. You've been through hell to have this much peace about it, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I love that. I love that you're willing to share that. So I'm excited about your show. I want to make sure that your listeners know what the show is going to be about and that my listeners know how to find it. It's the Shadowed Soul podcast. You can find it on our network. And John, where can somebody go to find out more about you?
I mean, right now, I have a Twitter. I don't have a Twitter account, but right now I have basically Facebook. I mean, you can learn more about the book that way. Or learn more about me. The best way I actually learn more about me is go to Amazon, look up Shadowed Soul, Spagnoli. It tells my description, who I am, just talks about the book. Right now, I don't have a website. That'd be a good idea, give more information about myself. But what's going to happen over time with my podcast, you're going to learn a lot about me because I'm going to infuse a lot of information about me. I mean, certain things I won't bring up, but about me, who I am as a person and what do I do, my goals in life, things like that. Over time on my podcast, you're going to learn a lot more about me. And you're going to learn how I've overcome, as you discussed, different problems I've had and things like that. I've also written a very short book, The Sunflower Story by me. It's a children's book I wrote about the story of a sunflower and how sunflowers grow, things like that. But the book itself is Shadowed Soul. And like I said, it's kind of autobiographical in that a lot of the things that happen is in the book about me. I mean, there's some issues that clearly are not mine. So when you read the book, some people try to figure out, well, which one's you? And they ask me, which one's you? Which one's you? So it's kind of interesting that way. But I have to do a website. I have no website at the moment. But I do have an email address shadowedsoulpodcast@gmail.com. I do encourage people to write to me with whatever situation they're in if they want to. If they want to be interviewed, if they just want to make a point to me, anything they want to talk about, they can send it to me and I can work it into the podcast with their permission, and maybe get them as interviewing, get an interview with them. I know someone I met from the Philippines. He's a medical doctor. He has bipolar. She knows a lot about it. She's an expert in it. I have someone else I know that's been clinically depressed. He wants to get on the show. So I have various people coming onto the show that will basically, show us, how they're feeling also.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining the network, and thanks for being another voice out there, making positive change.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mental Health News Radio.
Sometimes I'm passive aggressive, but never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps, or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial.